Welcome to Heroes Have Wings, the podcast that gives a voice to the unsung heroes of Army aviation. I'm your host, Jason Santiago. For the Army aviators, crew chiefs, and flight medics who put it all on the line in the heat of battle, this is their opportunity to share untold stories of courage, sacrifice, and unbreakable will. From their beginnings to the battlefield, you hear about their hardships, the moments of doubt, and how they overcame impossible odds to save lives. These warriors didn't just fight for survival, they put others above themselves, embodying the true spirit of heroism and selfless service. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Heroes Have Wings. Ladies and gentlemen, today's guest is a definition of resilience, grit, and compassion. She grew up in a small Wisconsin farm town, walking miles through fields just to wash dishes as a kid, proving early on that life was never going to outwork her. From those humble beginnings, Jessica Brewington rose to the ranks of Chief Warrant Officer 3, serving 21 and a half years in the U.S. Army, because in her words, that half a year counts, and every damn minute of it was earned. Jessica didn't just serve, she lived the kind of missions that most only read about. She flew MEDEVAC missions into hell, called for blood when lives were on the line, and ran into the fight without hesitation. She earned the Air Medal with Valor, but if you ask her, the true award was making it home to her family. A leader, a warrior, a survivor, and today, the first woman to step into the Heroes Have Wings cockpit. Get ready to hear what it truly means to give grace, fight for your people, and live every day like it's your last. Jessica Brewington, welcome to Heroes Have Wings.
Hey, Jason, how are you?
I'm doing great.
You're looking good.
Thank you. So are you. How's life been treating you?
Man, I can't complain. I can't complain. I got a roof over my head, food on our plates.
That's a great place to start. So
yeah.
Let's get it started. Let's start off with quick hits, all right?
All right, let's go.
Coffee or energy drinks?
Coffee.
City life, country living?
Country living.
Summer heat, winter cold?
Ooh. Summer heat.
Movies or books?
Books.
Dog person or cat person?
All of the above.
Chickens as well, right?
Yes, chickens.
Love it. Beach vacation or mountain retreat?
Mountain retreat.
Waking up early, stay up late?
A little bit of both, but more morning.
Action movies or comedies?
Comedies.
Movies or books?
Books.
Camping or road trip?
Camping.
Texting or calling?
That's situational dependent.
I agree with you 100%. Sometimes you just need the brevity, send out a text message. Sometimes I like to hear people's voices, so.
Exactly.
Let's get it started. So let's talk about your childhood.
Okay. So I was raised in Wisconsin. I was born in Maryland, right outside Aberdeen Proving Ground. Both my parents were MPs, and then we moved back to Wisconsin. And my parents divorced when I was in kindergarten, I believe, kindergarten or first grade. And so from there on, I didn't see my dad until I was about 16 years old. So I was with my mom, a single parent, for a while. She remarried, and then I think middle school, it just went back to a single parent life, and then graduated high school. So we lived on a farm. We had horses and cats and dogs, and that's probably why I am the way I am today. So I have a full sister, Jennifer, and then I have an older sister, Sandy. She lives in Germany. And then I have a younger brother, Adam, and then two younger sisters, Amy and Ashley. So that's kind of a quick synopsis of my childhood.
Okay. Let's go back. When your parents got divorced when you were 5, do you remember that?
I do. Yeah. It was a pretty tumultuous time, right? You don't know what's going on. You don't know that that's the last time you're going to see your dad, for years. And then it was a lot of struggles. So my both my parents got out of the military and then went back to Wisconsin. And I'm not sure if that was just where they decided to go. I'm not sure the backstory, but we have family in Arlington Heights, Illinois. We had family in Neenah, Wisconsin. So, it was kind of a happy medium for everyone.
So how was it growing up in Wisconsin?
It was amazing. You have 4 seasons. You know what season you're in. Unlike Alabama, it's either green or brown, you know. So, we lived on a farm out in the middle of nowhere. Your closest neighbor is a half mile away, maybe. So I lived in this tiny little town called Winchester, and it was so small that our mailing address was Larson. And then we went to the next biggest city or town. It's not a city, Winneconne. And I attended Winneconne from 3rd grade on up until I graduated. Everybody knew everyone, and everybody knew everyone's business.
So it's that true small town living, huh?
Yes.
So you essentially was in the same building or same school from 3rd grade all the way to graduation of high school.
Yes.
Wow. Are you still?
So I have one really close friend, Christy. We met in 5th grade. We were the two odd ducks out because there were like big tables, but then there was 2 desks right next to each other, and we ended up there, and we've been friends ever since. And I will, see people on Facebook, but she's really the one that has been through everything with me. We had a similar upbringing. Her parents is separated. And so it's just nice to have that person who understands and knows and listens and can give you some solid advice.
So the relationship with your mom, what was that like growing up?
She was always there. She was working all the time. She had to make some hard decisions in her life. Maybe some decisions that my sister and I may not understand, but at that moment in time, she made the best decision that she could. But I do always remember my mom being adamant that even as a girl, you could always do anything that you wanted. Her going in the military was a great example of being able to do things outside of the norm.
Now, the relationship with your dad, I know you say you didn't see him till you were 16. So we're talking about 11 years you didn't see, he was out your life. How much with his absence, how much did that affect your life in a positive or negative way?
For me, it was negative because there's that void. You have this pillar that's not there. I mean, we had our stepdad, but that's a different story. But we made up for lost time. When I was 16, I got to meet him again. And it's funny how, even though we weren't together for those 11 years, how similar we were. Like we're total dry joke people, like dad jokes, love it. I mean, just amazing. But even on like a philosophical level, on a religious level, on politics, like 99.9% of the time, my dad and I are like eye to eye. So even though we did lose some time, we made up for that. And recently, November, we just lost my dad, and it was really, it's just never anything that you're expecting. You're like, oh, my dad, my mom, they're gonna live forever, and November was a really, really hard time on our family.
I'm sorry to hear that. I am happy to hear that you and your dad did have an opportunity to build that relationship. And one thing I want to commend you on is, even though your dad was out of your life for 11 years, I'm so proud and happy that you gave him that opportunity to come back. And then you guys built that relationship, because I'm a product of a single parent household too. I didn't have my father. My father passed away when I was 2.
I'm
And
sorry.
and I understand what you said about missing that void and not having him there. And I firmly believe this because I'm a father now. Every child needs both of their parents in their lives. They may not have to live together, but they both have to be present.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you need to have that yin and yang, right?
And you being a mom, and I'm so happy you're on the show, by the way, okay? With you being a mom, I think it's very important that the children see how mom loves and then how dad loves, and they get that balance, like you just said, that yin and yang. So I'm very happy to hear that. And I want a lot of people to hear that message too. Even though your dad or your mom may not be in your life, no matter how much time, it's never too late to build that relationship and just grow from that.
Yes.
You put on here that you grew up on a farm. So were you working the farm every day or were you just present on the farm?
So we had horses and cats and dogs. So we weren't like working the farm. We had farmers that would rent our property and then they would bale hay for us. So I mean, there was definitely some hay baling and stacking, and it wasn't without work, but it wasn't a dairy farm where they're working every morning, every night to milk, and it's just a nonstop process, right? So we had a little bit easier.
Who are some of your biggest influences when you were growing up?
My mom and my dad, and then my Aunt Sue and Uncle Paul. You always have that one aunt or uncle that you go to, and it's nothing to do with your parents, but it's like that. My mom and dad don't know what they're talking about. And so my aunt and uncle would take me on vacations with them in the summertime. And it was really a good time for me to get away from the family and be with my aunt and uncle and my cousins. Just time where I could just be away and be myself.
I think that's very good, especially I've realized this, and I'm pretty sure you could attest to this. I realize our children start changing into different creatures and human beings at about 11, 12, right? So it's good to send them off sometimes so they could, spend some time with the family, spend some time with friends, but maybe go on a church retreat, something. But I think that time away from home is good so they can start developing their own character. You get them exposed to other things. It's important the people you have them around, obviously, right? So all those things are very, very important. It's crazy because now that I think about what you said about that aunt and uncle, I had my Uncle Dave and my Aunt Vicky. Those were the two in my life. They were very present. I would go spend a lot of time with them till it was about till 6th grade, and then after that, things fell off a little bit. But they would always come get us, and it was good to get away sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, just having an adult or two in your life who are sounding boards for, those moments when you're like, my mom and dad don't know anything. And then they're like, well, kind of just let it happen, or here's some advice. I had a teacher in high school, Dr. Jake Jacobs. He was a history teacher. He taught government, and I never loved history. I didn't like government, but he had a way of teaching that pulled you in. I also had a neighbor, Kate Fentner. She's an amazing lady. We moved off of our farm and she bought our farm. And so I would go hang out with her. And I don't know why I stopped talking to her. I don't know if it was just like, I'm moving away. I need to become my own person. And I think I just need to rekindle that relationship so she knows how much I appreciate and still appreciate her, everything that she did for me when I was a kid.
Yeah, I think she would greatly appreciate that. At what point in your childhood or teenage years did you realize you wanted to join the military?
We would spend hours and hours in the basement. And Dwayne's, all of his TA-50 was downstairs, and we would play Army, and James, Julie, Jennifer, we would all be downstairs playing, but James and I spent so many hours playing Army. We talked about Army. We always made up scenarios of what we would do. And honestly, I think everyone thought James was gonna go into the Army, and I don't know. I guess I was a girl and no one really knew, but I knew from a young age that I wanted to. And then as I got older, we didn't have money for college. I mean, I was athletic, but I wasn't going to the Olympics. So, going into the military was going to be the place where I got away, where I made my own money, made my own life, and got to see the world for what I needed to see in my life to become a better person.
And I agree. That's one thing I say constantly on the show is how the military gives us that opportunity to get away from home, become our own adults, start making our own money. And sometimes it's the only way for some of us. Same thing with me. I didn't have money for college and I just wanted to leave my hometown. I said, this isn't for me. So join the Army. And I know a lot of people did the same thing. So that's one of the greatest things about the military, giving us, I would say, middle to lower class children, that opportunity to excel and just look at life from a different standpoint. And a lot of people I know that retired are extremely successful now. It's a thankless thing that the military does for us. I mean, we give them a lot. I'm not saying we don't pay our dues, all right? But we give them a lot, but they do take care of us on the back end. So you decide to join the military. What time in your life was that around?
We had to take the test, and I really just took the test to get out of class. So I got the call from Sergeant Baugh, and I went down there and I met him, and I'm like, yeah, let's see what it's about. Let me see what jobs you have. And I, I don't think they think it's going to be that easy, but I think I was like that textbook recruit that was like, yeah, let's do this. So that was between my junior and senior year. But I went down to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I signed up to be an MP because that's what my parents did. That's what Dwayne did. I was like, yeah, I'm going to do this. And then I got cold feet because it was 6 years commitment. And I was like, whoa. So I signed everything. I signed every document. And then I went back and was like, Sergeant Baugh, I can't do this. Let's go back. So I signed up to be a medic and a medic National Guard. And I got to basic training and AIT. And I was like, I just went through all of this to go sit and do 1 weekend a month. No, let me just go active duty. And I think it was the best decision I ever made. Well, maybe not ever, but it was a really good decision for me.
Well, at that time, it was the best decision you made because it created that pathway for your life, right? How did your parents feel when you told them you were going to join the military?
I don't think it surprised them at all. I even did a speech in speech class about going in the Army and, learning the ranks. And I talked about wanting to be F-16 pilot, or F-15 pilot. Like when I was, I don't know, younger, maybe freshman, I wanted to be an F-15 pilot. So I got a model. I put it together. I don't even know where that thing is now. But so I don't think it was a surprise, honestly.
There's something I noticed about our generation. We pretty much raised ourselves. Our siblings and us, we had our own little ecosystem within the house, right? And then we created a bigger ecosystem with our friends in the neighborhood, our friends in the school, and our parents just let us figure it out. So you ship off to basic. What was that initial feeling like? I ask everybody, you get to MEPS, swear in for the last time, you get on the bus, they take you to the airport or wherever. How are you feeling when that happened?
Excited, nervous. I mean, every emotion that you could probably put into one little ball is what I felt. I'd never ridden on a plane before. That was my first time by myself getting on a plane. So excitement, nervousness, all of the above.
So where'd you do basic at?
Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, Fort Lost in the Woods. I left for basic training before my 18th birthday, and we were in like World War II barracks right before you went in. And I remember I was on the top floor, top bunk, and I was sitting there because we'd been there for like 3 or 4 days now. And it was my birthday, and I was kind of in my feels, and somebody found out it was my birthday. And I remember every girl in that barracks downstairs and upstairs came and sang me happy birthday. And it was like, okay, I'm ready. Let's go.
I think right there, that's probably the first sign you saw of, we are a team here in the Army. It's probably not going to be that bad of an experience.
Yeah.
What year was this?
97. Well, I'll tell you, before I got on that cattle truck, I was like, yay, this is going to be fun. And then I had, your uniforms are still crisp as you're getting on that cattle truck. You have a duffel bag on your front, a duffel bag on your back, and they call it a cattle truck for a reason. You are in there like cows. And I remember my first drill sergeant that came on the truck was a female, and she was yelling and I just remember her saying, "Keep your eyes forward, don't turn." And that like immature person, or that inquisitive, I'll say inquisitive person in me was like, I gotta look. And I turned just a little bit. She had my number. We got to the building and we did the dump, and she came and found me. You would have thought she wanted to be my best friend because she spent so much individual time with me, front, back, go. It was great. It was a great learning lesson for me to not ever move.
Was it a co-ed at that time?
It was. Yep. First floor was all females. Second and third floor were males. I think we even had a fourth floor.
Did you struggle at any time in basic?
Not emotionally. I didn't struggle. I felt like I was becoming my own new person. And you had people to your left and right going through the struggle bus along with you. And it just, while it was difficult at times, no, I don't think I had problems myself.
Did you make any special accolades or honors at basic?
Not really. I tried to do as best as I could. I got accolades when I fell asleep and had to do overhead presses with a fire extinguisher for the whole class.
So you leave basic, you go to AIT. Where'd you do AIT at?
Fort Sam Houston.
How was it?
It's amazing down there. It was definitely nice to get away from Fort Leonard Wood, rainy, cold, to go down to Fort Sam. Now, I think there's this idea that if you're in the South, it's not cold. It gets cold there. It gets cold here in Alabama. It snows here. So we got there, it was still cold, but I was selected to go be one of the soldiers of the month, or maybe they even had soldier of the week at that time. And I failed miserably because I didn't know. They're like, here's a paper, study all of this, know it. But because I didn't have a grasp on the military, I went in and probably made a fool of myself.
You learned a valuable lesson out of it, though, right? Take things serious.
Yeah, definitely.
How long was AIT for you?
So AIT back then was really fast. I think it was 9 weeks plus 2 weeks for like the integration training prior to leaving.
What was your rank at the time?
E2. I got a battle buddy to sign up, and then my friend Christy signed up. So we were E2s going through, and I think that whenever you see a rank on somebody before they're even supposed to have rank, you kind of get picked on. You get chosen to do a lot of the leadership things.
Did you experience any homesickness during basic or RATC?
I mean, a little bit. I mean, there's that sense of having a mom and a dad, and but I think there was also some excitement. So, you get to AIT and you feel like you're at the top of the totem pole.
When did you realize your duty station you were going to, and what duty station were you going to go to?
So I actually graduated AIT and went home because I was National Guard. And then that's when I was like, I did all that for what? So I went back to MEPS in Milwaukee, and they're probably like, why are you back here? So I went active duty, and there is when they chose my duty station. I didn't even get to choose it, which most people don't, but right back to Fort Lost in the Woods.
So you show up back to Fort Leonard Wood, what were you a part of again?
MEDEVAC. So it's the hospital on post. And where was I first? I believe I went to the lab. I worked in the lab. I drew blood nonstop, day after day after day, and I got really, really good at it. Like so good that if there was a kid that needed an IV or needed blood drawn, they'd be like, "Go get her, go get her." It's a skill, trying to find those little itty bitty veins. But then, so I went from the lab, and then I went and worked at the pediatric clinic, and then I worked at the immunization clinic. And I can't remember reception. You go to reception, you get all the shots. So I subsidized over there sometimes.
How long were you there for?
2 or 3 years, probably.
After those 2 or 3 years, were you ready to go somewhere else?
Oh, I was so ready because we got Hawaii. We were on our way to Hawaii.
What was your rank at this time?
So E4.
E4. So you were at Leonard Wood 2 to 3 years, promoted to E4. What was your most memorable moment at Leonard Wood?
I think a lot of my memories are always going to be associated with, or mostly associated with the medical field. When I was a medic, I remember we had a accident, and a lady came in, and she was driving a stick vehicle, and they cut off the stick because it was it was lodged in her thigh. And just seeing that was, it's one of those things you won't forget. But okay, let me back up. That's not the most memorable moment, honestly. 4th of July, 2000, I had my first baby girl, Mackenzie. So personal life versus professional life. Mackenzie was born on the 4th of July, and we've always told her that the fireworks were for you, and then she kind of figured it out when she got older.
How old are you when all this was happening?
So 2000, I was 21.
2021. That's,
yeah.
And the only reason I ask you, because now we're at our age, right? And we look back, you were making some huge life decisions at 2021, joining the military, getting married, having a baby, now moving to Hawaii. Those are 4 life significant events within probably a year, right? And these things are happening fast. So that saying about you growing up in the Army fast, it's a real thing. Mm-hmm. Now, did you know you were going to Schofield? Did you ask, or was the Army just like, hey, pack your family up, you're going to Hawaii?
So our reenlistment officer, NCO, she found the 2 spots for us, and we actually reenlisted on our commander's desk. So here we are up on his desk, raising our right hand to go to Hawaii.
When you get to Hawaii, was this before or after 9/11? Before. So what were you doing 9/11?
9/10. We were doing a field exercise at Dillingham, which is on the northwest side of the island of Oahu. And that evening, we had a breach in the wire, and they were coming towards the medical facility. So my squad and I had to run to go find these intruders, and we had our helmets on, we had goggles on, and when you're running, shadows and holes look like the same thing, which I thought it was just a shadow, which I fell in a 6-foot hole, and I jammed like every joint in one of my legs. And so September 11th, I woke up to my NCO walking through the medical tent and kicked that leg and was like, get up, and we all just thought it was a exercise, a part of the field exercise. But, even after they said, no, this is real world, we're packing up, we're going back, we still were just like, man, it doesn't feel real. But then I remember one of the soldiers, Elba Ayala, she was pulled from the field exercise, and they drove her home because her mom worked in the World Trade Center, and she was trying to find out, is her mom still alive? Where is she? And she had one of those miracle stories where her mom was either sick or was off that day and was not at work. So yeah, it was just such a crazy moment. And then to get out and turn the news on and watch it all was just such an awe moment in, I think, everyone's lives, honestly.
It's one of those events. It was pretty much our Pearl Harbor, right? It's something that we'll never forget. We'll always remember, even when we're 80 and 90. If we're blessed to live that long, we'll always remember that day, no matter where we were at and what we were doing. So you show up to Hawaii. What happened next?
So I show up to Hawaii, and I went to 325 Forward Support Battalion, and this was my real experience, having a tight-knit group of people, because you're going to the field, you're going to schools, you're training together. Again, the struggle bus is real, but you're all doing it together, so it just made it a lot better. I just remember so many people. Michael Hubner was in basic training with me. He ended up back there with me before we deployed. I can't explain the connection to people you work with in the military or friends. You become family, and you don't get that outside of the military, or I have not found that. Hawaii had not deployed anywhere since Pearl Harbor, right? I believe. So everyone's like, go to Hawaii, you're not going to deploy, blah, 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 blah. And then all of a sudden we're on orders to go to Afghanistan.
And what year was this?
So I got there in 2000. So 2002, 2003.
What was your rank at the time?
E5 was where I made it to there. While I was in Afghanistan, I went to the E5 board, but then that's kind of around the time that I submitted my flight packet. So that's the highest I made. It was E5.
So you're experiencing in Afghanistan, Kandahar. How was that experience?
We were a sister unit to 227 and 235 infantry, but we were part of the hospital, the Kandahar hospital, when it was just a yellow wooden building. Deploying as a medic is very eye-opening. You see so many things. When you see the people coming through, at one point, every time I woke up and I walked in, the morgue truck was there. So it's just it's a moment in life that you mature like in a heartbeat. I never saw, even working at the hospital in Fort Leonard Wood, I never saw a dead person. Well, I guess I did see one when I came back from AIT, but like actually trying to save someone's life and then it falls apart in front of you, it just changes you forever.
I agree with you. How did you feel you're at Leonardwood, just drawing blood. Fast forward 2 to 3 years later, now you're in a full-fledged combat zone, and you're seeing these. You're like in a high-paced trauma unit. What were you thinking at that time? Because we're only talking about 2 to 3 years, and you're still fairly young at this point.
You just you get into this like well-oiled machine, functioning medic, trying to save people, trying to become a better person, become a better soldier. But it really makes you internalize and start thinking about life. And that year was the year that I realized tomorrow may never come. Just to cherish what you have, focus on your family as much as possible. You go through experiences, you see people, there's missions that were flown in that I will never forget. They always tell you as a medic, don't look at the face, because you will never forget it. And that is a fact.
My experiences, talking to Jimmy, talking to you, talking to a lot of us, I don't think people realize how those faces are burned into our brains forever. Like no matter what you do, you can't forget it. And I'm not sure why it's like that, but it just happens. And that philosophy of what you just said, don't take life for granted. Life is short. Make sure you spend all the time with your family. Is that something you still carry on today? And is it something you instill in your family, your children, your friends?
I do. Right now where my family is at, it's a bit difficult. Family is the most important thing to me. That's what drives me to wake up every day. But there's nothing that can prepare you as a person going into combat. I mean, they can tell you can go through lanes and lanes and lanes of triage of, going to the range and firing your weapon, but nothing will prepare you.
I agree with you. I was talking to John Thomas about that. I was saying that there's nothing in the world that could replicate a combat zone except for a combat zone.
Yeah.
No matter what we do. And I was never a medic, but just being a part of the MEDEVAC, when you start getting those senses involved, the smell, you see the blood, and then you mix or touching the blood, it's a whole different level. It just can't be replicated. And it's like going to the Super Bowl. The best thing I guess I can compare it to is like going to the Super Bowl. You never know what the big game is like until you get there, right?
Yeah.
But when you get there, you realize very fast, holy shit, I am not prepared for this.
Yeah, I'm not prepared. But you prepare yourself really fast. One thing that I never saw myself doing was going on foot missions with the infantry. So they had this program where they wanted to, I guess it was a pilot program to see how females would be going out with the infantry. And there were a few of us that were selected, and they selected medics because it's kind of a 2-for-1 deal. We could help treat people, but we could also search women when we went into towns. So that was an experience I will never, ever forget. It was my first time flying on a Chinook. I didn't know that the back of the Chinook, when it comes down and being in a field, is about a 2-foot drop, maybe 3 foot when you're in a field and there's all those grooves. I fell right off of the Chinook, and they tell you go out, drop. Wouldn't you know, I fell right into a ditch full of water. And walking around Afghanistan with MVGs, I had Eli Bohorquez next to me, who didn't know me from anyone except for that I was a sister unit medic. But they took care of me when I was out there, and going out and seeing a third world country for yourself will humble you I mean, it's just such a complete humbling experience.
It's something else we can't even, you see it on TV, right? But I tell people, when you get there, sing it, and living it and feeling it, right? All your senses being a part of that environment is just completely different.
The smells, the sounds, the temperature, the moment you get off the plane and you tell people, you try to explain that moment, especially in Kandahar with Poo Pond, right? Have you ever been to Kandahar?
I've never been to Kandahar.
Okay, so Poo Pond, I guess, was put in by the Russians. It had this fountain in the middle, and you're like, well, I don't know why you need that. But, you get off the plane and you're hit with this 109 degree weather. Imagine shoving your face into the hot oven and then just pelting yourself with sand. Is the best way I can explain that. They eat sheep over there, so there's this certain smell every day that the fire starts up, and then you smell the lamb cooking. It's a place that I will never forget, and I can often just start thinking about it and feel and smell and hear everything.
The crazy thing is how everything you just mentioned, it looks different when you're flying now. Right? How we were delayed from taking off because the way they heated their homes there with burning the trash and, the smog, and it's crazy. It's things I don't think we'll ever forget.
No. And I really wish that people in America could experience that to realize how good they have it.
I think a lot of people in America need to eat some humble pie, man.
Yeah.
Real. It's I think it's something, even myself, now that I've been a civilian for 10 years, I do take for granted sometimes. But I'll never, when I would interact with my members at the gym when it was open, they would ask me how I'm doing, and I would always tell them, any day I wake up in America and I have a bathroom in the same building that I'm sleeping in,
yes,
it's one of the greatest days of my life. I mean, I'm already ahead. They're like, what do you mean? I said, when you go to combat and you have these little things that we take for granted here, running water, just a bathroom, a clean bathroom, right?
Yes.
Not having to get fully dressed at 2:00 in the morning to go use the restroom, or you have to go take a shower 2 miles down the road. These are the things that you just take for granted, and you just gain a fond appreciation for when you're at home. And it's something I'll never forget.
Yes. I have a funny story. While you're downrange, you're exposed to so many foreign parasites. And I mean, when you get sick downrange, you get sick. And one moment this one time I was so sick, I was, it was coming out the top and the bottom, and you're like, I don't know what to do. And I remember my soldier Moses. So I had an IV. I'm in a porta potty, and I have a dilemma because I'm going to the bathroom and I need to vomit. And the next thing I know, I'm like, oh, there's a urinal right here. I'm going to throw up in it. But then I lean over and my face hits the urinal, and then it's like dry, like heaving, because I'm like, I just hit the urinal on my face. And now my medic is hearing me like in the worst moment of my life. Like, people do not understand.
The struggle bus is real out there.
Yeah. Bad.
This is off topic, but this is something you can relate to. And I know every veteran that's been in combat is going to laugh at this. Do you remember the Porta-John checks? You get into the Porta-John and you're just looking here to see how high the toilet paper and the poop was. You're like, hell no.
Yes.
Oh, that's something hideous, man.
And there's the flies just like hanging out.
It's crazy.
They should make a cartoon about that, honestly.
We should. I think we could just have a podcast about that alone.
Yes.
What was one or two of your most memorable moments in your first deployment?
I was sitting at, there was only like one computer per platoon, and it was actually my time. So I was sitting at the computer, and I had Google up, and we're the only show in town, but I saw the news pop up saying that there was 4 soldiers and an interpreter blown up in a Humvee, and it happened like 3 minutes ago. And I was like, that's weird. Hey, have you guys heard anything? Because there's something all over the news. Probably 5 minutes later, we got a call. We got the 9 line. And I remember going to the flight line. So depending on if it was a KIA or actual living humans coming in, you would go to the flight line, or if it was a KIA, you would go over to a different area of the flight line. But I remember going up to the flight line, seeing that helicopter come in. And so only the 4 Americans came on that flight. And all I knew was that they were sitting on gas cans and they were burned from head to toe. I remember looking at all 4 of them. Whew. You couldn't tell. Whew, sorry.
Take your time.
You couldn't tell what race they were because what hair they had was singed to their scalp. Everything was burnt to a crisp from their head. Anything that was exposed was burned, and I was the only medic in the back. And to hear their screaming, like, help, help. And honestly, the only thing that I could do between the flight line and the hospital was start cutting. I just started cutting clothes, and they're screaming, and it was just such an intense moment. And so we had, it was considered a mass cal, and we had 5 tables set up. The interpreter eventually came in, and protocol when you have 3rd-degree burns is to debride the skin. So I remember I was with one soldier, and you're trying to talk them down off of this insane moment that they're going through. And he was telling me that the reason that they were where they were at was because of an unfortunate mistake by the battalion commander. He left his green book in the village. There was one way in and one way out of that village. And so by the time they had already come out that one-way road, the commander realized he left the book. So he chose that Humvee with the 4 soldiers and the interpreter to go back and get his book. I mean, I can only imagine what information was in the book. So he was telling us everything, and you're there listening to the story. One of the soldiers was a face model, and he, I believe, got the worst brunt of it as far as when the gas cans blew up. He inhaled the flames, so we ended up having to intubate him. But all 4 of them were flown out, and to be there in that moment, supporting them. I mean, he knew who I was when I explained who I was, so there was a better connection there. But I'll tell you, as he's telling me this story, the battalion commander was right in front of me, and the emotion, the tears, like he was he didn't want them to know he was there, but you could tell he will never be the same after that experience. So I don't remember their names. I do remember other people's names, but that was one of the craziest moments. We had another soldier there was a runaway weapon, so they came back from a mission and they were cleaning their weapons and they were clearing it, and I can't remember if it was a 50 cal or whatever, but if you drop it with ammo in it, they call it a runaway, and it basically cut a soldier in half. And oh gosh, I mean, it was just such a sight, and he was losing blood so fast. We needed to do an emergency blood donation. So my first thought was I ran to the PX. I didn't care who was there. I just screamed at the top of my lungs, we need, and I don't know what, I mean, I'm O positive, so he must have been positive, whatever he was. I was like, anyone O positive, O negative, we need blood now. So I ran from there. I went to the chow hall and I screamed in there. And then so the chow hall was kind of like right in front of the infantry row of talks. And so here I am, a 6-foot tall chick just blowing into these infantry talks. And I can only imagine they're like, what is this chick doing here? But I went to every single one that I could get to and begged, you got to get these people and get them to the hospital. So I got back, I donated blood. And then after I got done donating blood, I started pulling blood, drawing blood. I know he went through at least 50 bags, 50 pints of blood while he was on the ground. But the people that showed up that day, that line never stopped. It never stopped until he left. And he had, I believe, over 100 bags of blood on the aircraft ready to go when they took off. And that just, to me, shows that camaraderie. Like, people would drop everything to be there. Unfortunately, he didn't make it, but it's just one of those moments that you will never, ever forget.
Just hearing it, it's crazy that, like you said, the resilience in soldiers to help each other out is crazy. It is.
It's truly amazing. And I mean, you can look at firefighters, you can look at police officers to kind of get a sense of that. But when you're in a war zone, there's a different element there.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. It's something I'll never explain. We can never explain it. You just have to really be there to see it.
Yeah.
That's the best way I could say, because it's like you said, now you're probably the reason why, but now they have that intercom, well, later on in deployments, they had the intercom, we need blood, and everybody will come to the aid station and start donating blood. But just that level of commitment and sacrifice, and even the civilians that were there, right? Later on when we had the contractors show up, even them, they were bought in. They would show up and give blood, and everybody had a common, we did everything we had to do to keep everybody alive as best as we could. And we never asked questions. We never complained about it. We just did it.
Yeah.
And that was something that I will always be grateful to be a part of.
I think knowing that the person to your left and right, no matter what color they are, no matter what sex they are going to be there for you. I don't even need to know the person next to me. And I knew that they would be there for me and I would be there for them.
I agree with you 100%. I think that's one of the biggest things that helped each other, like, get through it every day. Like the ground guys, they knew that aviation was going to come. Like, we're coming for you guys. Come hell or high water. We're coming to help you guys out. And I think that level of sacrifice and commitment to each other, I think that was something that we were good about not using a poor word, but indoctrinating each other about, right? We knew that when it came to helping each other, we had each other's backs. No questions about it. Like, we may fight. We may have been fighting 20 minutes ago, but hey, now let's put that away. Let's keep it pushing. Let's keep it moving.
Exactly.
What was your biggest takeaway from that deployment? After seeing all these things, you're still, how old are you at this time? 25?
21, 22?
21, 22.
Yeah.
How old's your oldest child?
She's 24.
24. My oldest son is 24. I got 22, 23, 21. And the things we were doing in our young 20s at their age, I can't even imagine them doing it, right?
I think the one thing that I learned, not one thing, I mean, there's so many things that you learn, but you lose a lot of innocence when you deploy, and you become more calloused to the realities of life. You never know if the person to your left or right, in general, not speaking about soldiers, you never know if they have good intentions, bad intentions. You know, when we would have local nationals come in, you don't know them from anybody. You don't know if they have a bomb in them. I had one patient came in with a gunshot wound to the abdomen. We didn't know if he had a bomb inside of him because his intestines were all hanging out. And, you know, you can't bring that person in until we make sure there's no bombs. It's weird to be like, yeah, let me go check in there, you know? But that was a weird one too, because he was talking to me. I don't know what he was saying, the language barrier. And apparently he was trying to tell me I need to throw up. But he hit like as close to my mouth as possible. And anyway, what I learned is not everyone on this planet has a kind heart and is working to help others. They may think they are, but they're not. We had another patient come in, and the interpreter said he can't urinate. And I was like, you know, okay, he's got a UTI. Here's a cup. And he said, no, he insists he can't use the bathroom. So I took him to the back and I put him in an area, and I said, okay, well, let me see what's going on. There's nothing that could prepare anyone for what I saw when I opened that curtain. He was apparently tortured by the Taliban, and this is hard. They tortured him by cutting his penis straight down the middle. And what I walked into was they took 3 strands of black yarn and folded it back together and tied it around and hoped for the best. And so this gentleman hadn't peed in like 5 days. There was infection. So he was an immediate candidate. We got him back into the OR, and they restructure. What am I trying to say? They basically gave him a new urethra so he could go to the bathroom. But to see what kind of torture people go through, you know, for whatever their cause is pretty scary.
I think you realize at that age too what we're really dealing with at this point, right?
Yeah.
At what level are people really willing to go to inflict harm on other people? And that's one of the craziest things about being in combat or war. You see the true dark side of human beings, and then at a flip of a switch, you can see the true kindness and the potential of people really going out of their way to help other human beings as well. So you see that stark difference. And like you said, it's a lot to deal with it, especially at any age. Shit, even if we had to deal with that now, I'm like, I don't know if I could do that. I could do it, but I don't know if I'd want to do it. At what point in that deployment, if it was that deployment, that you realized you want to be an aviator?
So it was actually in a field exercise before we deployed, when I really got to be really close up with a MEDEVAC helicopter. So I was like, woo, you look at a pilot, you're like, they're so smart. I don't know if I could ever be a pilot. But then the very first time I saw a MEDEVAC helicopter fly in to drop off people, I was like, that's my ultimate goal in the military, is to become a MEDEVAC pilot.
So did you fill out your paperwork on that deployment or when you got back from that deployment?
I took the test on the deployment, and I filled out the packet on the deployment. Um, I took my test in a tent. There was no power. Power went out. So I'm in a tent with the flap open so I could see it. It's timed. And, I passed, which I was like shocked. I don't know. You just kind of have this, I don't know if it's from my upbringing, or I just never had like super self-confidence. So I took the test, I set them in my packet, and I got selected on the first go.
Look at you.
So I remember looking at the board results on our one computer we had, and just running up and down the hallway, so excited. I'm sure they're like, what's she up to now? This weirdo, But I was so excited.
Yeah, I know that feeling. What did you do to decompress, or at least keep it all together in that first rotation? Because just some of the stories you were telling me, that's a lot to deal with. How did you handle that, and how did you keep your mental together?
Even though we didn't want to do it, we did PT. And as much as you don't want to do PT, there's something about the endorphins you get, and working together with your squad or with your platoon. So there was that. We did yoga, read books, and, the Haji Mart, we would go get DVDs and watch. That year Napoleon Dynamite came out. And again, remember, I love dry humor. We watched Napoleon Dynamite every single night for months. I could tell you almost every line, every little quippy quote. My lips hurt real bad. I got it. I got it all. But, there's a certain point in a deployment, though, where you don't shut down, but you just kind of start coming into yourself, because the callousness is happening. You're starting to miss your family. You don't understand the mission. Like, yeah, I was told I have to be here, but why am I here? What are we fighting for? So you kind of get to this point where I was coming inside, and I had to talk myself off the ledge of like anger, but truly what helped me make it through was the medics to my left and right.
Such a great point you bring up, because I think that's something that we all need to hear, that we need each other.
Yeah.
People need each other. And I think one of the biggest things COVID did to the world and our society is it created such a separation amongst people.
Yes.
Right. And it's so crazy, because I agree with you. I often talk about how I was angry in the Army. I had my reasons, and, I lacked confidence like you did. But something now, my age, in my mid-40s, I realize that I need people in my life. Like,
yeah.
Emphatically, without a doubt, I'm asking for help. I need my children. I realize I need the love from my children. I need my friends in my life, right, to help me become the better man. And I need good people in my life. And I think that's something we have forgotten as a society.
Your computer is not going to give you the interaction that you need from a human being.
Correct. It's something, no matter how much we create AI and all this, like you said, all this computer stuff, there's nothing like a human touch. And I'm not even talking in a sexual way, non-sexual, human,
Oh, a
just
hug.
a hug from my friend, right? A hugging my daughter. Like those things, I need those things as a human being. She needs those. You need those things from your children, right? And
Yeah.
I think that's what we're missing, really. And it's sad. So I want to clarify, before I get to that, I think it's going to take something huge in the world or our country to bring us all back together. All right, I'm not a guy of, I don't speak on conspiracy theories or bad things, but in my last episode, I said it. I said every generation is tried. I think the people in their 20s right now, I think they're the next generation on deck, and they're going to be tried. I just know they're going to be tried, because if you just look at history and the way history repeats itself continuously, it's about that time. And I feel very confident in they're lacking resilience, but the 20-year-olds that I see, once they're put to the test, I know they'll answer that call. And I think it's going to take something significant to bring our country back together, so people can start, getting back together and getting unified and, just loving each other. Not even loving each other, just like each other, right?
Yeah. I mean, the closest I've ever seen America was the days, weeks, and months following 9/11.
Correct. And that was over 20 years ago.
Oh my gosh.
All
Makes
right.
me feel old.
And if you look at the history of the world, something always happens every 20 years.
Yeah. And we can't erase history like it has happened in the past, because you don't learn from it. You don't learn from the mistakes. You don't learn from the positive right doings of other people when it gets erased.
So you found out that you got accepted to flight school in Kandahar.
Correct.
I found out when I was in Afghanistan too. So it isn't a very elating feeling, like, yay.
And being in just a crappy place, you get this amazing news. There's a bigger light at the end of the tunnel.
Did they let you come home early for flight school?
They didn't let me come home super early, but I was on like the Advon coming home. We had to rent an apartment because we were going to be there just long enough to get back, turn in gear or whatever, and then we went to Fort Rucker.
So you show up to Rucker. You ever been down south?
The only time I've ever been down south was when I went to Disney World in like first or second grade, and we went to, so sidebar conversation, but we went to Cracker Barrel, and I got my breakfast, and I was like, "Mom, these potatoes are lumpy," and they were grits. So this is my first time ever staying in the South for a longer period than AIT.
Any culture shock?
Yes. I don't know if it's the small town feel that I came from. Everyone knows everyone, but there was always like the hey, hi, how are you doing?
What was warrant officer school like?
Being through basic training, you already knew that it was, I hate to say a game, but you're there to be torn down again. I mean, you come into basic, they tear you down so that they can build you back up into what they want you to be. And going through walk school, even just the packet, you're like, why am I doing this? It's not about the thing that they want you to do. It's to see if you can follow directions. Can you follow directions? Because if you can't follow directions, how are you going to fly a multi-million-dollar aircraft? So I get to walk school again. They kill you. I mean, that hill by the clinic, everyone goes down the hill by Alligator Lake, and that hill killed all of us. Like every one of my toes turned black and blue and fell off, but it builds character. Every single moment built character. And I still have friends from flight school. I mean, obviously, but Paula Tucker lives here with me in Huntsville, and I had no clue she was here. But it was one of those, we're going to tear you down and we're going to build you back up.
What year was that when you went to flight school?
2004-ish, I think.
What month? Only reason I asked, because I started walks on April 24th, 2004. And the only reason I know that was the day before my birthday.
Really?
And they took me out of Iraq early.
Mm.
I went to Washington. From Washington, I drove all the way to Alabama.
Oh my gosh.
And the next day I started flight school, and it was the day before my birthday. That's the only reason why I remember that.
That's crazy. Yeah, I don't know, maybe May or June, so we were probably there at the same time because it's roughly a year.
So you get through walks, start flight school. Any issues at flight school?
I ended up flipping and going to be with the lieutenants, which was really, really hard. But they brought me in and everything was fine. But really, I mean, no issues. Just all the scare tactics, right? There's so many scare tactics. But no, I don't think I had any issues going through flight school.
So they took you out of a predominantly warrant officer class and put you with lieutenants? Oof.
Yeah.
That's a struggle right there.
Yeah, and I had to go through, what was the navigation with the 58s? I can't remember that. I was with this lieutenant, and I flew first, and I don't know if the IP just had something for me. He was trying to prove a point. He was like, I had hit every target on time, plus or minus 30 seconds, and so this guy was like, I want you to take me to this pond right here. And I'm like, okay. So I do my thing, and I figure out my timing, and we're flying along, and I see a pond, and I'm like, I don't think that's it. Let's keep going a little bit further, because I think he thought I was going to take that pond. Anyway, I got done with that check ride, and he gave me like an 80 something and gave the lieutenant 98, and he missed every single point. I was like, what is this? But no, I enjoyed flight school. I mean, it's like learning from a fire hose.
Did you always know you want to be, well, you said you always want to do MEDEVAC. At what point did you find out that you were going to fly Blackhawks?
I think only the National Guard reserves, they already know what they're getting when they go through, and there's only a certain amount of spots. So I think there was 2 Chinooks, maybe like 6 Apaches, and the rest were Blackhawks. And I knew, just because I have a heart, like for caring for people, that I couldn't fly an Apache. I knew if I was in that moment, I would probably fall apart and be like, oh, I just killed someone. So then ironically, the pilot who missed all of his checkpoints during our ride, he was the top of the class, and he picked Chinooks, and then another Chinook was gone. And so I got Blackhawks, and because I wanted to fly MEDEVAC.
So where'd you go after flight school?
So after flight school, I went to Kaserne, Germany. Amazing, amazing place. I love Germany. I'm part German.
How long were you there for?
So 3 years, and 15 months of that was in Iraq.
Did you just say you're part German?
Yeah.
Okay. What part is your family from, if you know?
I really don't know. I mean, I did 23andMe, and I knew growing up that I was German. I don't know. I'm kind of a mutt when it comes to my heredity, but it was just kind of nice to go there and go to different countries. Didn't want to go to Iraq, but we went, which that was a really good deployment as far as I didn't work with injured people, dead people, children. Just, it was either VIP or air assault, depending on what mission set you have for that day.
You spent 3 years in Germany. 15 months of that was in Iraq. Now, this deployment, compared to your first deployment, how was it from kinetic standpoint, or just dealing with I know you just said you flew a lot of GSAB, that type of stuff. So did you guys see any kinetic activity or anything to that nature?
I mean, we definitely saw, most of the time, the only time we saw if we were getting shot at was at night and if they had tracer rounds. So, I mean, you definitely could see it. I mean, the closest thing that, man, I think just when there was incoming is the only time that we really had any problems, right? So it wasn't an easy deployment, but it wasn't the hardest. It was probably the easiest out of the 3 that I've had.
Jessica, it's crazy that we as veterans, we sit around and say an easy deployment. Like, I get it. Some people do stay on a fob all day, right? But if you're flying if you're flying through hostile territory every day, I get there's different levels of, engagement and activity and things like that. But it's crazy how a lot of us aviators and soldiers think that our level of craziness is crazy, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest threat for us was IEDs and animal, I don't know, what do they call it? It was where they would put it on a donkey and they would hit it to run and then it would blow up. I don't even know what they were called. Animal-borne IVs or IEDs, but
I'm not sure either.
it was interesting to fly there in Iraq because, you've got the Hanging Gardens there, which is what is it? One of the 7 wonders of the world. But when you go there, you're like, I don't see anything wonderful right here.
What was your biggest takeaway from that deployment?
The biggest thing I probably took away from that deployment was one foot in front of the other. Just keep moving. There's bad things that are going to happen. There's good things that are going to happen.
One of the greatest things about Heroes Have Wings, I hear all these different perspectives from everybody. So it's good to hear. And the unique thing is everybody has their own takeaway.
Yeah.
What was your most memorable moment during that deployment?
I've told my commander this, so she already knew that I did this after the fact. Like, after I got out of the military, she's here in Huntsville, and I'm like, you're not going to believe what I did. So, you make all these friends when you're in the military. And when I was at Fort Leonard Wood, I met one of my most amazing friends. I have Christy, now I have Mandy. She was a pharmacy tech, and we knew that we were in country together. And she was in the green zone. And so I landed, and we had like 4 hours to kill. And this is not the most proud moment of my life because I thought I was doing this great thing. So I leave the helipad and I walk out the gate and there's nobody saying anything. And I have my booning cap on. No, I just had PC on. Anyway, I had my weapon, and I knew based off of where the hospital was compared to the helipad that I had like 3 blocks up and 1 block over, whatever it was. So here I am walking in the green zone by myself to the hospital. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to surprise my friend. This is going to be great. So I walk in and I find her, and I walk into the pharmacy, and I had to come up with a story so that she would come. So I complained about my medicine, and I'm like, I want to talk to your NCO. And she came around that corner and almost tipped 2 large shelves of medication. And, it was just, it was the culminating moment of my time there because I got to go see this friend that we will always be friends. She said, hey, how did you get here? And I was like, yeah, it was weird. I didn't know you guys allowed like local nationals on the roads in the green zone. And she's like, Jess, you were literally walking in enemy territory. And I was like, I mean, I have a baby at home, or my daughter's at home. Anyway, not the proudest moment of my life, but definitely the most memorable moment of my life. They put me in an ambulance and got me back.
Okay, I was gonna ask, how did you get back?
But it was so strange because there's a gate right there. It wasn't even a gate. It was just big barrels. You just had to weave out of it. Nobody said anything. Not like, hey, man, where you going? Nothing. So note to self, green does not always mean good to go. Yeah. I mean, even I remember a maroon 4-door car with like 8 Iraqis in it was like driving by looking at me like, what is going on? And I was like,
They were so surprised. They were thinking, there's no way in hell this is happening.
yeah, yes. Oh, dude. I know people are going to be like, what a moron. But like, there was nothing at the gate to stop me.
What was your thought process knowing you were going to Iraq, especially after your first deployment and all the things you saw that first deployment? How are you feeling going to your second one?
I felt a little bit better about being in a helicopter and not in like ground vehicles because, I mean, that's truly who's getting hit the most. But I was also in that Woj phase of being a pilot where you're just constantly on guard, trying to do the right thing, hoping you're not going to be the no notice A part that comes up, right? So I was just trying to absorb everything that I could. And I had some great pilots in that unit with me. Tim Eggleston, Jesse Eisman. I mean, so many great pilots who shaped and molded me into the person I am today.
When did you leave Germany? What year?
7, 8.
2007?
Mm-hmm.
Where'd you go after Germany?
To the 101st.
What was your initial reaction when you found out you were going to 101st?
I made PC while I was in Germany, so I was like, all right,
That's a pretty big deal, by the way.
It is. Normally everyone gets day and night MVG, but at that time I only got day and night. So I got there and eventually made day night MVG PC before we deployed again, which that was definitely a humbling moment in my aviation career. Just I needed a little more work. So, but going to the 101st was good because it was closer to home.
So you show up. Did you know immediately that you were going to 101st Combat Aviation Brigade?
Yeah, it was on the orders. That's where I was going.
So when you get there, you already know that you're deploying again, correct? How are you feeling then?
Well, so as a female in the military, there's never a good time to have a baby, right? And it's definitely something that stresses us out because you never ever want that stigma of you got pregnant to get out of a deployment. So we got pregnant in Germany and then came. So that was one of my hardest things. And I got to 6101 and they asked me what unit or what company do you want to be in? And this was my ultimate goal, to be in MEDEVAC. So I said MEDEVAC. And I went over and I was so excited. Like, I know I can't fly while I'm pregnant, but I was so excited. So I talked to the platoon leader and he was like, oh, like, I don't know what to do with that situation. So they sent me back over to the battalion commander, and it was kind of funny because, I mean, how do you broach that subject, right? So he pulled me in his office and he says, take your seat. And his first line was, I'm aware of your condition. And I was like,
what?
Oh, like chronic? Is it?
What condition are we talking?
Yeah. So, but he informed me that day, though, because they needed pilots, and I don't know what it is now, but at that moment in time, you were you were authorized, or the unit was authorized to deploy you 6 months after you had a baby. So he said, you will be deploying at the 6-month mark. So they left probably 2 months before I came into country. So I worked at the battalion while I was pregnant, and then worked while everyone deployed, and then finally I deployed. So I hadn't flown for my entire pregnancy. And then I got into Kandahar again, and had to go through RL progression after probably a year and a half of not flying. So I got into Kandahar in like May. Let's see, October, November, December. Yeah, so like May, I got into country, and by July 4th was my first mission.
You are the first lady guest I've had, all right? And I want to ask, you brought it up, I want to ask you, were there any challenges in the military being a woman?
I really feel that if there were challenges for women, and I'm probably going to eat crow for this, I feel like a lot of them were self-induced, because I was in male, aviation is a male-dominated world, and I never felt that I was being alienated for my sex, ever. And I think it's all about mindset, really. Truly, the biggest challenge as a woman is, when am I going to have a baby? Now there are times, there are situations where women are taken advantage of. One of my close friends experienced rape while she was in the military. But me personally, I didn't have a bad experience because I was a woman.
And you did say something very important. You were in some combat MOSs, not combat arm MOSs, but you're always with them. Aviation, it's a combat arms MOS. But even as a medic, when you're on those patrols with the infantry guys, like you're in the shit with these dudes. You're not sitting back chilling. Like, you're forward patrolling with these guys and doing it. I remember during that time they started that initiative. They were going to put women with the combat arms to do exactly what you said. Medics, they could provide the aid, they could do the pat downs and all that stuff, and just be a part of the team. But I just wanted to ask you that question because, just for, a young lady that wants to join the military, your experience, and I get it, everybody's experience is different, right? This is why we have different people on the show, just to hear their experiences. But it's good to hear that you didn't have any issues going through it. And if you did, you probably didn't even see him.
Or if there was ever anyone that tried to broach something negative with me, I just put a stop to it,
Shutting that shit down.
Yeah.
You ain't playing no games with you guys.
I gotta get home to my kids.
So you show up to the deployment,
Mm-hmm.
and the unit, just to help for clarity, the unit's already been there how long?
Roughly 2 months.
2 months. All right. So you still have, 10 months left?
Yeah. So I left my daughter with Tom's parents. They came and got her the day before I deployed. And so I was a complete emotional wreck, leaving my baby, 6-month-old baby, with, Tom's parents, who did an amazing job. They raised her just like she was their own. She is their own, but so I go into country, and here I am. I have an older daughter, and I have Chloe, and I'm going on MEDEVAC missions.
And I just want to say something. I'm a father, right? And I love my kids very much. But being a mom, leaving her 6-month-old baby to go to a combat zone, I can't even understand how you felt.
It was gut wrenching. You know, in movies when you see a lady like fall to her knees and crying, I always thought that was just some shenanigans. And when I talked to Tom's mom and dad, I just said, hey, when you leave, no matter what happens, just go. And I was that movie scene that fell to my knees. And thankfully, my friend Christy was there. My friend for 5th grade was there next to me, supporting me, and they left. And I went inside. I probably drank a lot just to bring myself down a little bit. But there's, I know I keep saying there's nothing that can prepare you for that, but there is truly nothing that will prepare you to be separated from your baby, I know you guys experience leaving your kids, but gosh, it was torture.
Man, thank you for sharing that, because the audience hasn't even felt that, that emotion and just leaving your child behind like that. And that is tough. That is tough. And I'm proud of you for handling it. And once again, your friend being there just attests to the point that it matters having good people in your life during trying times. It matters so much. And that says a lot about your character. I'm taking my hat off to you on that one. That's tough. That is tough. So you show up not smiling, I'm just metaphorically speaking, but you show up smiling into Afghanistan. Did everybody receive you with open arms, or was it just, how aviation units could be sometimes? Or did they accept you? Did they be like, yeah, we're going to get you up and going? And how was the experience when you got there?
They were great. I don't know if it was because they were like, thank God we got somebody else, but they were great. I was nervous because I hadn't flown in a year and a half. So there's that. I got to get back in the books. I got to study. I got to not make a fool out of myself. So I got there. I studied. I studied so much that I would stand up with my book or my -10 on the bed, and I would just sway back and forth trying to just take it all in and be ready, because again, nothing will prepare you for a medevac mission. Even if you are on the receiving end of it, my first deployment, that tour was the one that took the most out of me. I think 2010, that year, it was rough. It was a rough year for the Rakkasans. It was a rough year for aviation, all around.
Were you nervous going back to Kandahar? Now in the different spectrum of the medical field? Now you're MEDEVAC. You're not the medic going into the ground. So your level of seeing things, you pretty much multiplied your level of exposure by 10 just by becoming a MEDEVAC pilot. Did that ever cross your mind, and did it ever cause any angst or worry?
Yes, yeah. That moment in Top Gun when, I can't remember what his name is, but he's looking at the picture of his family in the cockpit. So I never carried a picture of my family because I didn't want to become a prisoner of war with pictures. So I never had that. But in my mind, I was like, what have you done? What horrible decision have you made? My very my very first day, like July 4th, which is Mackenzie's birthday, was my very first experience in MEDEVAC missions. And I was with Juan Guzman and Jameson Bard. He was the crew chief, and Bradley. Oh gosh, Bradley, don't be upset with me. Your name will come to me. We also had a PA on board. The first mission we had, a POI is a point of injury with MEDEVAC, and the first one, standard, a few minutes, I can't remember, 5K out, you call pop smoke. The smoke comes up, you verify color, and you land, you pick up the patient, and you leave. Bradley Robbins was the medic on board that day. And we had mission after mission after mission, and the very last mission of the day was like the mission that it was the mission of all missions. So it was a hot LZ. It was a cherry LZ. So when you're inbound on something like that, the whole crew has to agree to go in. So we had a gunshot wound through the face, a gunshot wound through an elbow, and I believe 2 KIAs. And our procedure was MEDEVAC picks up the patients, chase aircraft picks up the KIAs, just to, to keep them separated. It's a mental health thing, for the patients in the back. And so we linked up with 58s, which, and I know every platform makes fun of the other platform, right? There's this kind of a fun camaraderie amongst the platforms. So we linked up, we did an in-flight mission brief, and so we were kind of like the flying V going in, right? So we're in front, we have 58s on both sides, and you could hear gunfire. It was just all around us, and we called pop smoke. But the weird thing was 2 plumes of smoke came up at the same time. So the enemy learned our TTP of pop smoke. We're going to land where the smoke is. So we came inbound. The 58s are just clearing it out for us. And we went to land, and maybe 10 feet above where we were about to land, the infantry guy gets on and says, "Don't land there. You're going to land on an IED." And we're like, go around, go around, go around. And I'm on the controls. And it was like something out of a movie. That mission brief set us straight. You do mission brief and you're like, oh, here we go again. It's the same brief every day. But so we took off, we went to the left, the 58s went behind us, and we went back to the north and set up again. And we came back in, and we just crested over the trees, and I started to descend. And I think between me pushing down on the collective, and I think maybe Juan got a little nervous, but we had a hard landing, and everything went black. And I was thinking to myself, am I dead? Like it was that moment of, this is it. This was the moment that is going to take me. And within, it felt like minutes, but it was probably like 2 seconds. We hit the ground, and what caused the darkness was the mud flying over us. Now, this is July 4th in Afghanistan. That is, at this point, dry as a bone. And we landed in a spongy, wet field. Somebody was watching over us. So we're down. The medic and the crew chief jump out, and I honestly don't know how long we were on the ground. And the events kind of unfolded, and I don't know all of them in order, but the gunfire around us just was so loud, even over the intercom. When we got back to base, the medic came up to us and thought, we didn't think you were coming back, based off of the gunfire that they could hear through our mic boom being transmitted on the radio. So you're supposed to put a patient on a litter and walk them up. And I remember turning around and looking back and seeing the medics carrying him, or maybe an infantry and a medic. That guy jumped off. He jumped off of the litter, ran to the helicopter, and did this. His arms kind of like he's trying to hold it in. This is the gunshot wound to the elbow. And he kind of did this like Rambo move, like got himself in the aircraft. Actually, before that happened, a mortar round landed at our 6 o'clock. So you're like, oh God, I'm getting shot at. We have a mortar round. So then another mortar round hit, but it was at our like 3:30, 4 o'clock, but it was closer. And I could hear the PA in the back screaming. Like, I mean, it was raw. It was just a moment that, I mean, it's burned into our memory. And then the last mortar round that hit, it was so crazy what happened, because I was looking out to the right, and the mortar round sunk right next to our rotor tip, like right there. I should have been dead, but it was a dud. It didn't go off. And I'm just, so when I get nervous, I inappropriately like laugh. I make jokes about the situation and and I was like, no shit, there it was, the middle of Afghanistan getting shot at. So over the radio, Bard said he needed more ammo. He was out of ammo. And there was no way for me to know where he was at. There was no way for us to get him ammo. And the next thing I heard that was like so heart-wrenching was Bard saying, please don't leave us. And whew, there was no way in hell we were leaving without our crew, without the patients. And so after that, you know, we're still just on high alert. And I look over to like the 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, and I see movement. And I radioed to the infantry. I said, are any of you at the southeast of the field? And he said, negative, that's the enemy. So my daughter's birthday, just this crazy mission. In the back of my head, I'm like, dang it, we had a hard landing. Now I got to go back and bleed and pee, you know? And so that was the moment that I transferred the controls to Juan. And I locked and loaded my weapon with the intent to kill someone. And that moment will change anyone. There's a lot of things that change about you, but the moment that you lock and load your weapon to kill someone, I don't know how to explain it. You know, I got babies back home, and here I am. I'm willing to kill someone to make it home to my kids, right? So I locked and loaded my weapon, and we made it we made a decision to put all the KIA and the patients on our aircraft because there was no way our chase aircraft was going to get in. So the PA, I remember at one moment, I thought she was hit. And being that I was a medic, I was like, okay, Juan, you take, he was on the controls, but I was like, okay, I'm going to go get her. Something is up. She was fine. It was just, she was, you never know how you're going to act in that moment of this could be it. So anyway, we got everyone on board. We got our crew on board and we made it back safe to Kandahar. And I got back and I remember, my weapon is loaded, locked and loaded. And Captain Fine came up to the door and I handed it to her and I said, it's locked and loaded. I got out and it was so weird because there was like half of the battalion staff were out there waiting for our arrival because they knew how bad, I guess what was relayed back to them was, we might not make it. They came to do a check on the aircraft because without a doubt, we need to fix any bullet holes because there's going to be some. I got out of the aircraft and walked behind, they have barriers between the helicopters. There was so many people and I just needed a moment. And I walked behind that barrier and it came and I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this for another 10 months. But I know that was a really, really long story, but
No, that's
the patient that got shot through the face, he got a trach on the way back. Robbins was able to give him a trach. I have a journal that I wrote that whole mission in, and I questioned myself, like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to continue to put myself in harm with my kids back at home? But thankfully, that was probably the most dangerous mission I'd ever been on. But I dealt with is it worth it? Is it worth it? Why am I here? I need to get to my kids. And the gentleman who got shot through the face, he wrote a letter and sent it to the hospital. And they linked us up. They found out who it was, the crew that flew him, and they brought that letter to us. And for the rest of the deployment, that letter was what gave me the strength and will to make it through, because he made it home to see the birth of his daughter. And he put that in his letter. And so a lot of those negative thoughts and questioning moments were relieved with that letter. Now, when I got back, you still deal with so much when you return, because you kind of compartmentalize everything and you don't deal with it while you're there. But I kind of stalked the soldier and I called him. I found his number on AKO and I called him and I was like, "Hi, you don't know me. This is Jessica Brewington." And I didn't know what to say. And he's like, hold on. What? So in the amount of time from when we rescued him until that moment, he and his wife were still together and they had another baby. And it just solidified a lot of the issues that I had coming back.
That was deep. That was deep.
Sorry, I know it was a long story, but it's...
No, the story. I tell young people, and I tell people this all the time, especially people that go get they go get their concealed permit license and now they're carrying a weapon on them, and I tell them, it's something you said. The moment you have to make that decision to take someone's life is a very hard decision you have to make. You just have to make sure you're trained and ready to make it, right? And for to see all you guys handle the way you guys handled that, it's unbelievable.
And you never know what is going to be said on a mission. But one thing that stuck out while we're flying back, and Bradley Robbins is giving this trach, he said, "Hey, did you know there's apple trees in Afghanistan?" And we're like, "What?" He said he got to where the patient was, looked up and saw apple trees, or the apples in the tree, and he looked back down. He said, "When I left, I looked back up and there was no tree left because of all the gunfire that was going on above them."
Damn.
But they have apple trees in Afghanistan.
Damn. Man, it's hearing stories like yours, like, justifies the reason why I need to do this, because people need to hear this stuff. This is, you can make a movie off that story alone. And there's so many stories like that, especially during that 2010 deployment. And the crazy thing is, this is just, we're only talking about one unit. We're not even talking about the Rakkasans that went through it, all the guys who went through it in the Korengal in 2008. I mean, there is story after story, and it's just hearing them. It's hard not to get emotional. I will admit, it is hard not to get emotional. All right, Jessica, that's your first mission, your daughter's birthday, right out of the gate, batshit craziness. How was the rest of the deployment?
It wasn't without hazards by any means. Gunfire, it was kind of an everyday thing. So while you're in Kandahar, there are several FOBs that you can go to. I never went up north, but I was stationed at FOB Ramrod, FOB Wilson, and then out at Camp Dwyer. We did several rotations. And so one comment you said earlier, or question, was, what did you do in your spare time? Well, if you're not familiar, the Army, a lot of people in the Army play spades. And we played spades. Stephanie Luke and I oftentimes got partnered with each other on missions. So she was always my spade partner. And I think she'll be my ride or die spade partner for the rest of my life. So, gosh, there's so many different events that happened, but Dwyer was a Marine base, and I think the one mission, and it wasn't even my mission, it was a mass cal, and we were just going in circles, going to pick patients up, dropping them off, going to pick patients up, dropping them off. And this one moment, we were on the helipad and we had to move over because they were coming in. And we were just sitting there waiting for the medics to come back. And I remember turning around to look back again. I guess I was right seat because I turned and looked. And what I saw on that litter was, it was a Marine. He probably was a Marine. But it looked like someone went to the deli and put ground beef on a litter. There was nothing that said that was a human. And it was just, again, another one of those moments that humbles you, makes you realize that tomorrow may not come. But which that moment also led to some more issues when I got back. But we sit around and we play spades and we make inappropriate jokes, and that's how you make it through it. you're there going through the same things that everyone else is. You can talk to them, you can joke with them, you can play spades. But I'll tell you one thing that I did learn about Dwyer is that I never ever wanted to eat out of a mermaid again. I know I'm all over the place with stories, but while we were out there, we played spades with a few guys. Jonah McClellan was out there, and Sergeant Marvin Calhoun was out there, and we had the time of our lives. So flash forward a few rotations, I'm at Fob Ramrod, and any day, same day as any other day, and I got a phone call, and it was Rick Knowlton on the phone. And you get to know people while you're there, and I could hear something was wrong in his voice. And what he got out to me was that there was a down aircraft, and we lost 5 of our aviators that day, along with special operations. So God, it was a day that I wasn't ready to explain that to anyone in the tent. I ran out of the tent, and we call it going behind the generator. I know that sounds really strange, but as a woman, and I'm sure that you can relate to this, being married or being around your mom, there's 2 things that a female is going to do. They're either going to get emotional and cry, or they're going to yell. And I didn't want to do any of those in front of anyone. So I went outside. Stephanie saw me and followed me out because she was listening to the call. And that day we lost Lieutenant Colonel Baldwin, CW3 Matt Wagstaff, Jonah, CW2 Jonah Calhoun, Staff Sergeant Joshua Powell, and Sergeant Marvin Calhoun. And it was, picking up soldiers is rough, but when they're the person that worked directly with you, it's such a jolting moment. And I think one thing that, and I know we will get to this, that soldiers deal with, and this is really one of my big mental health things that I deal with, is survivor guilt. Coming back from a war zone, knowing that you made it, but so many other people didn't. And I think one of my concerns is always, when you lose somebody, you don't want to forget them. You don't want them to be forgotten. So you want to memorialize them, but you also know that you can't dwell on the fact that they're lost. And that's a really hard path to navigate, because being on a deployment is the worst emotional roller coaster that anyone can go through, really, right? You have your up days, you have your down days. But for me, the thing that sunk in the most was Jonah and Sergeant Calhoun. Last week, we were playing spades together in Dwyer, and now they're gone.
It hits home hard. It's another thing I can't explain. I don't even think I'm smart enough to explain it, but it's tough. It is really, really tough, man. Just trying to comprehend and deal with loss because it's so all of a sudden, right? That's something I don't know if I could ever explain. It's like you said, you got to try to find that balance.
And I don't want my interview to be all negative, but
it's something I hear a lot of the soldiers say, aviators say, it's not negative, it's real. Like, we have to understand that the things you're talking about is not happy moments, right? We're talking about combat, we're talking about loss of friends. These are not happy moments. It's nothing to do with negativities. It's about at one point of our life, this was the reality of our life.
yeah.
Like, this is the shit you see on TV and they make movies. This is actually people live this life. And that's what I'm really trying to convey to the world, that behind all the glory, it's sexy being an aviator, all the great stuff, there's a lot of pain behind that. There's a lot of loss. There's a lot of rationalization. Every day we try to rationalize, right? We try to rationalize, and there's some things we just can't rationalize. I don't know. I'm not I guess, well, I'll say it like we used to say it in the Army, that's above my pay grade, right? But it's never a negative thing. And if anybody takes it that way, that's on them to own, not you, not me, no one else. All right, these are our stories. This is what we're living in. This is our truth. And never be worried about that, ever.
I think, though, every soldier who makes it home goes through a very similar situation or thought process.
Agreed.
But one thing I can tell you is I am so thankful that I have the people that were there with me to understand it, that I can call at any time, day or night, and they can call me. And we'll walk through it. We'll talk through it. We'll cry together. We'll, yell at each other. There's nothing personal in those conversations. But it's very nice to know that you have somebody to go to.
Agree. That's one of the greatest assets we have is veterans, combat veterans. We have those people that we could call on. Amen.
Hey, you next door, we have a worldwide network of people who understand.
It's proud to be a part of it. It really is.
Yeah.
It comes with a lot of happiness, sadness, good times, bad times. It comes with the territory, but I'm happy I have it every time I look back.
Yeah.
And you know how I memorialize all my friends? Well, besides the fact I had my flight helmet when I retired, all their names were on it, I made a promise to myself and to them that every day I'm going to live the best version of myself, because they don't have that opportunity to keep, doing those things. So out of respect to them, I'm going to try my hardest not to complain, everything I do, I give it my best, and just be very intentional about how I live the rest of my life. Because if there's one thing I've realized in 3 combat deployments, just like you've had in your combat deployments, is the people that were dying were very young. Very young. Like, I try to wrap my mind around it. These kids that are dying are like my children's age right now.
Mm-hmm.
And the amount of pain their parents dealt with, right? And all the life that these kids had ahead of them. But they made a decision to defend their country and our way of life, and they ultimately felt like it was the right thing to do for them at the time.
I went and got some counseling, which I think every aviator crew chief, medic, it's faux pas to go get seen. But I knew after that tour that I really needed to go get help. So I went and I got seen, and my first counselor didn't work out because kind of what you were talking about earlier. He listened to my stories, but he started crying in my own counseling session, and I was like, no, I can't, this is not gonna work out. But being on the receiving end of hearing stories that even now talking about them, we can't explain all the detail that still lives and thrives in our memories. It's pretty shocking. But beyond all the negative aspects, and the death is what I'm talking about, the negative aspects, the going home with, amputated legs, or it's all a lot to take in, but there's so much about deploying that makes you a better person. And, some of the funny things that happen on deployment are what make it easier. We had this game when I came into country during this last tour we called the Easter Bunny. And do you remember the Easter Bunny?
I do the Easter Bunny to civilians to this day. I'm getting you. I'm an Easter Bunny. Just real quick before you tell the story. This is how ingrained this stuff is in our bodies, right? I used to Easter Bunny people at the gym all day. I'm getting you. And it's funny how they picked up on it, and they're gonna be laughing when they listen to this. And I didn't mean to cut you off, but go ahead.
But you were talking about, well, how did everyone receive you? And I really just wanted them to know that I'm here. I'm not a turd. You can joke with me, whatever. So, I was not privy to one of the golden rule of the Easter Bunny game was, I was flying with James Van Meter this day, and we were going to go eat. We got our plates. We were out eating, and I Easter Bunny'd James Van Meter, which is the golden rule. You do not Easter Bunny James Van Meter. And I was rolling. I'm like, Easter Bunny, and his food was everywhere. And I'm all, in your face. And you know that moment where you're looking at your sibling and they're telling you with eye contact that mom is right behind you or whatever, everyone behind him, everyone behind me, it was total silence. And I'm like, what? It's funny. Come on. No, it was not funny. And I had to go fly with James Van Meter after that. But the rest of the day was fine. It was an amazing time. But again, if you ever see James Van Meter, give him an Easter Bunny for me.
All right. What was your biggest takeaway from that deployment?
I mean, I know in my first deployment, I talked about tomorrow may not come, but tomorrow may not come. You are stronger than you will ever know. Waking up day in and day out to go fly a MEDEVAC it's a daily decision. I mean, it's a mission dependent situation. And even in those dark moments where you don't think anyone understands, where you don't think you can do it anymore, you can. You can't. And if you want it, you will.
Damn. So you got back from that deployment. You already knew something was wrong. You started getting counseling. At what point did you leave Fort Campbell?
In 2011 and went to Fort Rucker.
And what was your rank at the time? Were you a W3 now?
I think I may have gotten W3 at WOAC when I was an instructor. Yeah, I think I got it like right as I got there. And so I taught the advanced course for 2.5 years.
How was that? Was that the break you needed?
It was a good break. It was, I got to have a baby and be with him for his entire childhood.
How did it feel? Because I was an instructor down at Rucker as well. I was a SEER instructor. How did it feel? I know the challenges I had, but I want to hear it from another aviator. How did it feel leaving the cockpit after a combat deployment, one of the worst ones in your life, knowing you're going to leave the cockpit and now going to be a platform instructor down at Rucker? How are you feeling at that time?
Very mixed emotions. There's the part of you that's like, I need a break. I need to heal. I just need some time. But the other part of you is like, I need to go back. I need to be the one there. I've already lived it. I don't want anyone else to have to go through trauma. And honestly, I felt like I wasn't giving back the way I needed to. Going to a classroom versus being downrange, flying MEDEVAC and helping people. So it's kind of a tug of war. Where do I need to be? So just complete mixed emotions.
So when you leave ForceCom, get down to TRADOC down at Rucker, how are you dealing with your mental health and everything you've just dealt with for the last decade of these last 3 deployments?
So I was thankful that I was in TRADOC. Because I just went. I said I have kids. I need to get myself right so that I can be right for them. So I went, and that's when I went and saw someone, and I had to change providers, but they are insistent that you become a part of a group to go through the steps with other people. And back at that time, they didn't separate people who had been deployed versus people who had never deployed. And so I was in a group with, the colonel right next to me was in the Fort Hood shootings. Then there was a guy, I don't know, like 6 people away, and all he did was talk about how crappy his relationship was. And I was like, if I have to hear this guy talk about him and his wife another time, I'm done. I was the only female in that group, which made it difficult, because talking about these things, you become emotional, and crying in front of people, nonetheless, an entire room of men is difficult. I didn't make it too long in there, in that group setting, just because of it. It wasn't the right audience or the right group. So I just kind of talked to friends and tried to do a lot of healing on my own.
If it makes you feel any better, I never did group myself for that reason alone. I was never a fan of it, right? Because I did ask that question about who's going to be in that room, and they always told me they didn't know. I'll admit it, I have a problem with being vulnerable.
Yeah. I think most people do, you know?
And that's something I'm trying to work on to show the human side of me, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I really struggle with trying to be vulnerable with people that can't relate with me.
Yes.
Because when you're vulnerable with people that can't relate with you, they have a tendency to be insensitive and not understanding, right?
Yeah.
So that was something I never wanted to deal with because I knew how I would respond to that. It wouldn't be a good response.
Mm-hmm.
So I do feel, just know that you're not alone on that. There's a lot of us that I'm not doing group anything. How did you enjoy being a platform instructor? And the reason I ask is, once again, right? You go from, and there's nothing against being a warrant officer, advanced course instructor. Nothing wrong with it. I think it's a good experience for every warrant officer to go down to TRADOC and teach platform. It'll help with your public speaking. It'll give you a lot of credentials when you leave the Army, right?
Yeah.
But you remove yourself from being a badass aviator, right? We're sexy aviator pilots. Now we're platform instructors. And nothing, once again, nothing bad about it, but like it does take some adjusting to get to.
It does. If you know me personally, I'm pretty rough around the edges. And I think that's just an Army thing. So learning to not drop the "that's what she said" or F-bombs or whatever as an instructor, you're like, okay. So the other part about being an instructor is, especially in aviation, is the people that you're teaching are also going through the same trials and tribulations that you are. They probably just came from a deployment and they're dealing with their own personal, professional things, would probably rather be downrange, or so I found it difficult to motivate myself to want to sit there and teach a group of 60 warrant officers who oftentimes were an entire group of men, not a single female, how to write a memo. But you know, I think it's also known to be a place, the school is known to be a place to just take a break. So I can give them a break, teach them how to write a memo, use AR 2550, but also give them a break.
I never even thought of it that way, but that's a very valid point. Very. What was your most memorable moment being an instructor down at Rucker?
It really was kind of like The Office, right? The show The Office. It was kind of like all that office humor and being a small group leader. You know, every pilot in there is playing jokes on everyone. It's funny, you go from talking about war to I was a small group instructor, but I would bring in donuts to kind of break the ice because no one wanted to be there. Anyway, this one guy took a donut and it smashed another guy's cap on top of it. And I know it's such a small example, but it was really just the funniest moment because he came back in and nobody could keep a straight face. And that really did bring me back into like the funny part of being in the Army and aviation. But I mean, it's a gentleman's course, so there's not a lot of craziness going on. But I did have my son.
I know you could agree with this, but one of the biggest things I miss about the Army is how much we, lack of better words, fucked with each other. Like I tell everybody, it's 24 hours of like bullying and like unnecessary bullshit from
It is
from locking people into the porta-john when it's hot in there to, I mean, one thing that taught me is don't take yourself too seriously. You got to be very lighthearted because we are in a situation where, you know, we're going to deal with a lot. So when we have those times to laugh and, you know, do crazy stuff with each other and pick on each other, I think it builds a lot of character and it shows you the lighter side of life.
Yeah.
And it's crazy how we think of the bad times, but like you said earlier, those good times, of all the little crazy things we used to do to each other and the pranks we used to play. And I sit back, I used to get mad as hell about it, but now I'm realizing like shit was funny.
It was. Like you said, you can't take yourself too seriously. You're not any higher than the person to your right or left. I don't care if you have 4 stars on your hat. You're the same as me. I put my pants on the same way you do.
Did you have any takeaways from Rucker?
I mean, as far as being a soldier down at Rucker, it is a downtime for you. So, take the college courses, take the courses while you're there. I really used it as a platform to help myself be more sellable. I was already a safety officer. I took I did ILE. I did TAC ops while I was there. So I mean, just take every opportunity to, when you have those downtimes, to better yourself as a soldier, to make yourself priceless to the next unit you're going to.
I think one of the greatest things about Rucker is you really have the time to invest in your family time.
Yeah.
It was huge. I spent a lot of time. I was only there for 2.5 years, but I did a lot of family time. It was a good break and a good breath of fresh air.
Yeah, definitely.
Where'd you go after Rucker?
Next, I went to Fort Belvoir and flew the VIP mission up there.
Who's the most famous person you flew?
I never really looked at the names, but one mission I had like 22 stars on board. And I was like, well, don't mess this one up, Jess.
How was that mission in Fort Belvoir flying a VIP?
It was very eye-opening. It made me feel more secure about the readiness of our country. It also opened your eyes to a lot of so I'll say this, there's a lot of mission sets up there, and it opens your eyes to how prepared we are.
I agree with you on that. You know what made me realize how prepared we are? It's crazy, but when I became a SEER instructor and I saw how things really work behind the scenes at a higher level, much higher level, right? That's when I realized, like, man, we're going to be okay. Like, we really have to believe that we're going to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and you are put in some situations flying up in DC. It's a very high traffic area. And I remember flying over Dulles. I had to fly, that's part of one of the paths that you fly, and you're like, wait, what? You want me to fly over Dulles Airport, or, flying in near Baltimore? I mean, you really have to know the layout of the land and places that you go, or the altitudes that you fly at, like near the cemetery, the National Cemetery, and the Pentagon. I mean, you're flying just above the lights. I mean, it's a good mission. It's very eye-opening, like I said.
It's a very high stressful area to fly in because, like you said, a lot of no-fly zones, a lot of restrictions, a lot of altitude requirements. You're in a Class B airspace. And I know we just had that situation that just happened with the midair and everybody's talking recklessly. And a lot of people really don't understand how busy a Class B airspace is. We are talking about overwhelmingly busy, right? And then on top of that, you got all these other restrictions around you. So I could definitely see how flying in that area would make you a better aviator overall. I never had that opportunity to do that.
It really does. I mean, it forces you to cross your T's, dot your I's, and go back and check 5 more times.
What was your most memorable moment there?
Landing at the Pentagon was, it's just such a weird thought, right? Go to the Pentagon. Uh, um, just, I mean, the regulations associated with it, whatever, but it's an area that is, well, actually, so the Pentagon, but I also got to do, I got to fly near the Capitol, which you're flying into some areas that if you don't have the right access to get in there, you're not getting in. And if you're there, you're going to be escorted out really fast. But it was just, I felt privileged to be able to be on that mission and experience flying in those mission sets.
Were you PC there?
Yeah.
What was your biggest takeaway from flying in that area and being a part of that unit?
One, you can never be too prepared. And again, like I said earlier, just we as a nation are more prepared than I thought we were.
Now you're W3 now. How many years in the military?
So when I got to Valor, I probably had 18 years in.
Were you thinking about retirement at this time?
Yep. It's funny. You're thinking about retirement at like the 10-year mark. And the one thing that you do ask, and I think every soldier is like, when did you know it was time to retire? And the same answer is, when you know, you know. And you're like, oh, just tell me. And, everyone has that moment where they're like, I know.
So did you realize that at Belvoir, or did you PCS and realize it then?
So actually, I realized it at Fort Rucker. The military is not kind to dual military couples. And so there's been multiple times throughout my career and my husband's career where we've been separated. And so while I was at Rucker as an instructor, we had to be there for when the flag went up, to be there to salute with whatever class was there. But Tom wasn't there. So every weekday, I would wake up at 4, and then I would get the kids up at 4:30, and then I would put them in the door. Like, I would go around and shut all the lights off. And one day I looked at the front door, the front light was on, and here's my 2 babies. I have a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old sitting there in diapers at 5 a.m. And I'm like, what am I doing? Normal kids are not up right now. They're not doing this. And I have a picture on my cell phone. It's actually my cover photo. And it's something that gives me motivation every single day is I'm doing it for my family. So that day I took a picture and I sent it to my husband and I said, as soon as I can submit my retirement packet, I'm going to. And that was my when you know moment. And so I started working on my packet even before I got to Fort Belvoir.
What year were you at? 17 years?
So yeah, probably at Rutgers 17 years, then going to Fort Belvoir 18, 19. And then I went to Fort Bragg after that for my final year.
Why'd they send you to Bragg?
So again, the dual military thing, you follow. So Tom is the higher ranking, so I follow him where he goes. And it was partially a choice of mine because we've been separated so much. And I'm kind of a little control freak and I didn't want to let my kids go. So I decided to leave. I turned down W4 and submitted my packet right away when I got to Fort Bragg, which was not great. I didn't have a great reception while I was there. I mean, understandably so. They think they're getting a safety officer, and that safety officer shows up and says, hey, sorry, not sorry, I'm getting out.
In your defense, that's unacceptable. And that's one thing I will never accept from anybody from leaving the Army. That is unacceptable on leadership's behalf. All right. You're a senior W3, 19 years in the Army, 3 combat deployments. Like, you've paid your dues.
Yeah.
Right. You've done the things you had to do. You weren't hiding at Rucker or, Korea or these places that don't deploy. You did your time. You did the shit you had to do. And for them to show up and treat you that way, unacceptable. I'll never accept that. I'll tell any colonel that, general, that's unacceptable behavior on a leadership's behalf, because one thing as a leader that they need to do is understand their soldiers. Just take a few moments. I'm not telling you their whole life history, but you should know at a basic, like, look at their OER or their ORB or whatever it is. Find out this basic information. Why are they retiring? 3 deployments. She been in 19 years. She's been in the military, all of global war and terrorism phase. She's probably tired. Let's make sure we take care of her and send her out with an honoring send out. All right. But time and time, it doesn't happen that way. And that's very unfortunate.
Yeah. And by the time I got there, I was pretty calloused about everything. But as a professional, I went there, I took my job. I ended up being a safety officer for a company level, which is perfectly fine because I'm not looking for a promotion. But my commander and I didn't see eye to eye. I'm not I don't believe I'm a yes person. I'll let you know what I feel, but when you go to a unit and your commander is a yes man, or yes lady, oftentimes safety is overlooked. And I felt strongly about that, about the missions that this commander was accepting. He was overworking his personnel. And, he never said this and no one ever told me, but it was that I'm looking for that OER bullet kind of deal. And so at one point I requested a meeting with him because I wanted to express my concerns, pushing the ATP limits as far as flight hours. It wasn't good. And you're setting an example for all of these aviators. And there was a lot of new, young Wojs and W2s at the time. And I'm like, I just said, hey, you have got to stop taking all these missions. You have to come up with a better schedule, and he downplayed everything I said. He was very dismissive, but I believe it's all because I got there and I was retiring. That day was, I lost all military bearing and thought I was going to get an Article 15. I thought the worst because he and I were yelling at each other in his office because I felt so strongly about the safety of the soldiers, the lack of concern was not there with this commander. So this was like the culminating event for me that I knew I needed to go get seen because I had like an out of body experience. Like I knew it wasn't happening, but I saw myself jumping over his desk and like strangling him. And I'm like, whoa, this is not okay. So he just said, I don't know, as I left, he was like, I don't even want you to come back or whatever. And I was like, meh. And I slammed his door. I went and got all my stuff. And I remember saying to the pilots that were in the office, I was like, good luck with that crap or something. And I left and I slammed the company door. But it rattled me. It really rattled me, that like weird experience of like seeing red. I knew what people meant by when they were like, I saw red. So I went over to the mental health clinic on Fort Bragg, and said I need to be seen immediately. And that day was the day that I decided I was going to take my mental health seriously. That, I mean, I did attempt it in the past, but I got seen that day. And talking about groups, I owe where I'm at today to a gentleman named Mr. Green. He was insistent that I go to a group therapy. And I was like, no, we're not doing that. And he's like, listen, I just want you to try once. If you don't like it, you can go. And the one thing that separated this group therapy from all the others was, in order to be in this group, you had to have deployed, which was a game changer, complete game changer. And I remember showing up. I sat right by the door because I was like, this is BS. It's not going to work. And I owe that man so much for helping me heal and becoming a better person, a better parent. Because I think, you probably know somebody. You really do have dark moments coming back from deployments. And I mean, I'm not going to lie. I definitely self-medicated with alcohol. There was even times where I call my dad and I'm like, Dad, am I an alcoholic? And he's like, no, alcoholics would never ask themselves that. So you're doing fine. Just keep doing what you're doing. But yeah, I remember walking in that first day like, this is dumb. I'm not going to make it. But he proved me wrong, and I am a better person today because of Mr. Green.
I'm so proud of you for seeing that and reaching out and getting help, and not succumbing to the other thoughts and other things that other people have done. But I'm very proud that you did that. I want to bounce back to your argument with your company commander, just out of curiosity. And I'm only asking these questions to make sure when I make this statement, I say it correctly. This company commander was a new company commander?
He was young. Yeah, he was pretty young.
Did he have any experience, like true aviation experience?
I don't believe so. I think he may have been prior enlisted, but didn't show it. That phrase comeuppance. His comeuppance came after I left, and it was, you never want to see anyone struggle, but when you write your own checks and you cash them, so he definitely cashed his own check and reaped the benefits of it. Not, he's still alive. I don't want you to think I'm like dark like that, but at some point in your career, you have to stick up for those who don't have the self-esteem or the courage to do it yet. So you, as a senior leader, leaders come in all shapes, sizes, forms, and ranks, right? But as a senior warrant officer, as a senior NCO, you have to stick up for those people. And in that moment, I stuck up for what I believed in. And I'll tell you, had I not done that day, I don't think I could have left the Army knowing that I didn't do the right thing.
And the reason I asked you those questions, because you did the right thing. You did the right thing. When I was leaving the Army, when you was leaving the Army, there was a serious issue with young leaders, all right, outdoing their capabilities. And I'm not saying it's because they're poor leaders. I will say this because they didn't have the experience and they failed to listen to the people that had the experience to set them up for success. All right. I saw it time and time again. You have all these people, pretty much advisors in your company, that are trying to guide you in the right direction so you don't kill anybody and you don't end up in prison for your negligence, right? But you're going to blatantly ignore people and disregard people because you're the boss and you want to be right. Huge red flag, huge problem. And it's not effective leadership. So I get what you're saying 100%.
You know, and I think when the deployments started tapering down and you were getting captains who had never deployed, their mindset changed because they had to set themselves out from their peers, you know, to get the good OER. By that time, I was like, I don't care what my OER says. I just don't want anyone to die. And I will do what I have to do to make sure that doesn't happen.
Yep. And the reason you feel that way is because you know what that feeling is like, right? That young captain, young lieutenant, they don't have that feeling.
No.
They don't have those sleepless nights thinking about the soldiers that they lost because, you know, did I do something wrong? Could I done something better? They don't have those experiences, right? And it's something I've been saying the last 3 weeks. One person's problem isn't another person's problem, and this is why they don't understand. When it becomes your problem, that's when you'll understand. Okay? So if you want to be a great leader, some advice, listen to the people around you. They may get you far in life.
Yeah. Yeah. And I believe that this commander, I hope that this commander learned that lesson, that I wasn't just there to waste oxygen, that I truly was there with the intent of making our company a safer place to fly. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure what happened to him.
Yeah, I mean, it's water underneath the bridge, and you did the right thing. Know that in your heart. As a safety officer, you did the right thing. If you saw a young soldier right now, or even an older soldier, because, you know, with me on my mental health campaign and helping people while helping myself, I've realized that a lot of older veterans, they've compartmentalized so long that it starts beating them down when they get older. What advice would you give a young soldier or any soldier, anybody that's dealing with mental health? What advice would you give?
I think being in the military, there's this idea of perfection and everything has to be dress, and you always have to do, you have to be perfect at everything. Give yourself grace throughout your life because you will make mistakes. You will affect other people's lives, but as long as you give yourself grace and learn from your mistakes, you can't go wrong.
What are some things you do now to get yourself in alignment, give yourself that recheck if you need it? What do you do now?
Like we've talked about this whole time as friends, every one of my friends, plus my friend from high school or from 5th grade who is in the military still, you know, we talk to each other. We vent. Mental health, it took me a long time to even utter the acronym PTSD. It's not a one and done deal. You have to work at it. You have to continue to want to get better. You have to understand that it's not, okay, well, I did one session of counseling and it's over. It's something that you have to continue to work with, continue to seek out help or better yourself. So some things that I do, my friend Paula got me into cycling, Jimmy Shields cycles, right? I saw my first sergeant from Germany at at a race one day. But racing, or I'm not racing, I'm not trying to win any medals, but getting out in nature and focusing on that one thing, it just kind of helps the thoughts slow down and focus on yourself. I have a ton of animals. so, animals just give you unconditional love, and it's just all around. My grandfather, he was in Saipan, and so he saw some things. And one thing that he did, that I was like, well, if he did it, maybe it'll help me. He started painting. He painted at an older age, but I started painting, and it helps you stop or slow down and just focus on that one thing. I mean, right now I'm a geographical single mother. My daughter's in high school volleyball, travel ball, Charlie's in archery and football. So I'm all over the place, and I had to give myself that something that I could take with me and, just stop. So, I started arts, but, and reading if I can.
Nice. Those are all great things. When you retired from the Army, where'd you end up and what are you doing now?
So I'm currently in Huntsville, Alabama, and I work for a really good company, SAIC. And it's really strange. As an aviator, every 28 days you get this cute little disc, and your TAC Ops guy takes it and puts it in the GTAC, and you never really see it. You don't see that, right? So I'm on the backside of that. We receive DAFIF from, DAFIF is the files that make up your NavDB. We receive that from the NGA, National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. We process it, we generate navigation databases, and we test it to ensure that it's functioning properly. And then we disseminate it to the Hilo community of the Army. Kind of nerdy. Can't say that I thought I'd be doing this, but I am working with one of the pilots that I flew with in MEDEVAC, Steve King. So it's funny how the world goes around and you work with people, and then years later you end up working with them again. So yeah, that's what I do.
That's pretty cool. Army aviation, small world.
Yeah, very small.
What was your happiest moment in your military career?
The moment I got off the plane in Fort Campbell, coming back from that MEDEVAC deployment, and seeing Chloe, my little Chloe, she's just sitting there. She didn't know who I was, right? I knew who she was. She was with her grandparents, and then Chrissy, my friend, was there. And she, just seeing that little girl was the happiest moment, merely because I made it home, right? And so many other people didn't.
What is the biggest regret in life or in the military?
I mean, regret it's a very negative word, right? And I don't regret a lot of things that I've done. Everyone makes bad decisions in their life. I've learned from them.
What key lessons or takeaways do you want listeners to take away from gain from your story?
Trust yourself. When you want to do something, take that leap of faith and do it. But don't do it half-ass. Do it to the fullest extent. Fear will always be there. It's a part of life, right? But fear can stop you in your tracks from accomplishing your goals. I always, one statement I used to always tell soldiers, because they're like, I want to do that. I wish I could do that. And I always told them, a wish is only a wish until you write it down and it's a goal. And that is when you can move forward. with accomplishing things in life. So commit to what you want, live life to the fullest. And again, always remember that tomorrow may not come. So appreciate what you have.
3 words to describe yourself.
Passionate. Definitely passionate. When I feel something, like my last unit, I went in there with my horns down, ready to go. Sometimes I'm passionate to a fault. But I can say that I can sleep better at night by being as passionate as I am. What else? So kind of the opposite of that is compassionate. I'm compassionate. If I see somebody who needs something, if I see an animal who needs a home, I am there. My husband and my friends are like, oh my God, Jess, what are you thinking? I saw a homeless man in Huntsville and he just needed help. I took him to have lunch. I got him a hotel room. I got him in the car. We went to the Dollar Tree and I'm telling this story to my husband and he's like, you what? You put someone in your car that you don't even know? But I mean, I'm not that crazy to put someone in the car that could take me over or whatever, but I'm very passionate about that. I believe in giving back. And I'm a pretty busybody person. I don't sit down and watch movies well. I'm usually, I mean, I don't even know how I sat down this long, honestly, to do this. But kind of busybody, kind of dingy sometimes, but it's kind of, it's who I am.
That's the greatest thing. You are who you are. Share one fun fact about yourself that everybody wouldn't know.
I am so afraid of heights. I'm afraid of heights. I can't go to the edge of a building and look over. I can't. We went to Gatlinburg just recently. Well, last year, I guess. And they have this bridge. You have to pay to go over it. And there's like an 8-foot section of polyglass that looks straight down. You can't see anything except for the ground below you. I didn't make it. I crumbled. My kids walked over. My husband walked over. My in-laws walked over. And I sat there like a little baby, afraid of heights.
What's one thing you would tell your younger self or a younger child you had? What's the one thing if you could go back, tell your younger self or that advice to a younger child or somebody that you know?
Listen more than you talk. Take it in, and you better know what you're saying when it comes out.
What legacy do you want to leave behind for your friends, your family, your children, your grandchildren when you get them?
I want them to be humble and give back when they can. And giving back isn't just giving your time. It could be a mere look at someone and smile and say, I hope you have a good day. Or, like you said, a hug. A hug could be exactly what someone needs. If you see someone that has a nice outfit on, say, hey, I really like your outfit, and I know that sounds cheesy, but you never know what someone else is going through. You can't judge a book by its cover, right? And some of the strongest people that you believe are strong are going through some of the most trying moments of their life. So be kind and courteous and give back.
Spoken like a true leader. You got any projects going on right now?
So again, kind of going off of the volunteering, my life is very centered on my kids and my family. So right now, my daughter's in travel ball and high school volleyball, and again, giving back. So I'm trying to come up with different volunteer events to show these younger children who think, Starbucks grows on trees and iPhones are like $2 apparently, that it's not about materialistic things. It's not about money. It's about the person you are. So I'm coming up with all of these events so that they have opportunities to go out and see the reality. Take those rose-colored glasses off so you can see what's really out there. Again, give back when you can.
I think the world needs more people like you.
They're out there.
We just got to find them. And I think one thing we're dealing with right now, we're dealing with a bombardment of cynicism right now. So with all the goodness that is going on out there, it's covered with all the bad things that people want to continuously talk about. But keep doing the great things you're doing. You're impacting a lot of people's lives.
Well, I really appreciate what you're doing.
Oh, I appreciate that. I really do. Any final words?
We've talked about a lot of mental health today, and one thing that I want everyone to know, especially with like COVID happening and everyone going to their little homes and not seeing people, is you're never alone. You are never alone, and all you have to do is reach out.
Well, Jessica, what I normally do, I want to thank you for being on Heroes Have Wings. I know I've been harassing you for probably the last 3 months, but I know you're busy, and I'm very, very, very appreciative of you taking this time out today to share your story with the world. I will admit, you almost made me cry 2 times today, but I held it in. And your story is amazing. And you reminded me today why I do this, because stories like yours need to be told so it can inspire the world, a community, even if it's one young lady out there or one young man out there that just wants to hear an amazing stories like yours, that no matter what the odds were, you kept pushing. You consistently been resilient, even during hard times. And like I said, I am very, very appreciative that you're here. You set a precedence. You are the first lady on Heroes Have Wings. And I hope that this tears down the wall for other lady soldiers to come on and share their stories, because I've realized it is hard to tell your story and especially share it with the world.
Yes,
so
definitely.
I understand when people tell me no. I don't pressure anybody, but I do appreciate you. And I don't know if you'll ever understand how much I do appreciate you for coming on here and just doing this show with me and making it happen. And if you ever need anything from me, you got my number. It doesn't matter. If I have it, it's yours. I tell everybody that. You come to Nashville, you need some, I got you. Whatever it is, always allow me the opportunity to tell you no instead of you saying no for me.
Well, I appreciate that, and every sentiment right back at you.
I appreciate that. And in closing, stay bold, stay fearless. Resilience wins battles. Stories shape legacies. I'm your host, Jason Santiago. My fine and wonderful guest, Jessica Brewington. Thank you for being here. Another wonderful episode of Heroes Have Wings. We will see you guys on the next episode. Thank you for tuning in to Heroes Have Wings, where we honor the extraordinary stories of grit, sacrifice, and resilience. Remember, every hero's journey starts with a single step, so take yours today. If you love this episode, like, subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Until next time, keep pushing limits, breaking barriers, and living your truth. I'm your host, Jason Santiago, and this is Heroes Have Wings, where legends rise.